Namaskarams to the lotus feet of our gurus and namaskarams to all of you. I thank Shankar Hall for giving me this opportunity to talk about this wonderful work called Subramanya Bhujangam. It is a stotram written by Sri Adi Shankaracharya on the Lord of Tiruchendur. As we know, Adi Shankaracharya is known as Shanmata Sthapanacharya. He established the worship of 6 deities according to the path laid in the Vedas. Actually, it would be right to say that it is not 6 different deities but 6 forms of the same Supreme God or Parabrahman. These 6 forms are Ganapathi, Kumara, who is also known as Subrahmanya, and Shiva, Vishnu, Shakti and Surya. For the benefit of the followers of Kaumaram, Acharya has composed this great work called Subramanya Bhujangam, and in that he tells us about the greatness of Subramanya, his tattva, and he also tells us how to meditate on his form and how to offer our prayers to him. The most significant and important thing about Subramanya Bhujangam is that it is a work which has great mantra shakti. And when we say mantra shakti, it means that simply the recitation or just the sounds of the recitation of the verses have the power to create the effect that we want, whatever we are looking for, whatever we are praying for. So this fact that it is a work with a lot of mantra shakti has been emphasized by all the Jagat Gurus of Sringeri and Kamakoti Peethams. They have said repeatedly that if you want to overcome diseases and as well as sorrows of the mind, which means both physical and mental distresses, Subramanya Bhujangam should be chanted regularly. And we hear of many devotees who were exhorted by the Jagat Gurus to recite it, benefiting from this. So in today's world, where the current scenario is that that which is manifesting as physical afflictions, suffering, as well as mental stress, fear and confusion today. So in this situation, it is important that we all learn about Subramanya Bhujangam and learn to recite it and say it regularly. So delving into the work, it is a stotram which has 33 verses, 32 actually, and additionally one verse which is called the Phalashruti, which tells us the benefits of chanting that verse. All these 33 verses are composed in a particular meter called as Bhujanga Prayatam. Bhujanga Prayatam is a meter which has 12 syllables in every line or every quarter. In fact, Acharya has composed many works in this particular meter. We have Sharada Bhujanga Prayata Stotram, Shiva Bhujangam, Rama Bhujangam, Vishnu Bhujangam, Ganesha Bhujangam, Devi Bhujangam. And we also have other stotras which don't have the title as Bhujangam but still contain many Bhujanga Prayata stotrams. For example, Bhavani Ashtakam, which every verse in which ends with Gatistvam Gatistvam Tvameka Bhavani. That is a Bhujanga Prayata meter. Similarly, 9 out of the 11 verses in Vedasara Shiva Stotram are also in this meter. So it is probably a meter very dear to Acharya. Why is it called Bhujanga Prayatam? Bhujangam means a snake, and the reason why it's called Bhujangam is because Bhujam Gachati. It goes in a manner which is Bhujam. Bhujam normally we think means arm or shoulder, but actually Bhujam also has another meaning which is curved or crooked. So the snake has a movement which is curved or crooked. We know that the snake travels in a zigzag manner. In fact, even a road which is not straight, we call it a serpentine road to indicate this. So when the snake moves, we can see that it contracts its body and then pushes it forward. So this movement is reflected in the arrangement of the syllables in the Bhujanga Prayatam meter. So you have every quarter with 12 syllables, and the 12 can be divided into 4 parts, 3 each, and each 3 has the same rhythm, which is 1 light syllable followed by 2 heavy syllables. So light and heavy are called Laghu and Guru Aksharas. So let's take the first line of the stotram. Sada Bala Rupapi Vignadrihantri. Sada Ba. You can see that the first one is short, which is light, and the next 2 are long, making it heavy. So this pattern repeats in all 4 parts of the first line, and similarly in all the lines. So it's a very rhythmic meter, unlike some other meters which are not rhythmic fully. So why did Acharya use this for Subramanya Bhujangam? Of course, he has used it to praise all other gods, but in this case it's very appropriate. Let's see the reasons. Firstly, the legend behind how this stotra got composed is that it is said in the Shankara Charitram that when Acharya was residing in Gokarna Kshetram, which is in Karnataka, he was afflicted by some ailment, some stomach ailment, and the Lord Shiva, Gokarneshwara, appeared in his dream and told him to go to Tiruchendur and pray to Subrahmanya for being cured. So he reached Tiruchendur by his yogic powers. He reached it immediately, and when he reached, he saw that Adisesha was worshipping Subrahmanya over there. So Adisesha being a snake, the meter Bhujanga Prayatam must have occurred to him. But in fact, there is an even more important reason, which is that Subrahmanya himself is considered to take the forms of snakes. So in fact, he is worshipped in the form of Nagaswarupa, Nagaraja, in many temples, especially in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. So this fact is also mentioned by a great composer, Muthuswami Dikshitar, in one of his famous kritis on Muruga, on Subramanya, which is Shri Subrahmanyaya Namaste. In that, in the Anupallavi, second line, he says, Vasuki Takshakadi Sarpaswarupa Dharanaya. So I salute him who takes on the forms of sarpas, snakes, like Vasuki and Takshaka. So therefore, again, this Bhujanga Prayatam meter seems to be very appropriate. Now let's look at the contents. So roughly, for our own understanding, we could divide the 32 verses into 3 parts. Okay, not equal parts. The first 8 verses are something like a prelude to the work. They tell us about this god Kartikeya or Subrahmanya. They tell us about his glory and also about the greatness of this kshetram called Tiruchendur. The second part, which is about 10 verses, has the Padhadi Keshanta Varnana of Subrahmanya. In other words, it describes his feet, his waist, his shoulders, his face, and so on. So a detailed description of the form of Subrahmanya is found in the next few verses. The last few verses, they contain different kinds of prayers or prarthanas, different kinds of things that we request him to bless us with. So now let us spend time on looking at each of these parts. We'll probably spend the maximum time on the first 2 today. Depending on the time available, we will also look at some of the prarthanas in the third part. So now the prelude, the first 8 verses. The first verse is an invocation to Ganapathi. So it starts with saying Sada Bala Rupapi Vignadrihantri Mahadanti Vaktrapi Panchasya Manya. So this contains a particular figure of speech, Alankaram, called as Virodhabhasam. So Virodhabhasam is an Alankaram, which means that as we hear the words of the verse, it seems to be contradictory. It gives us a sense of how does this fit? Isn't it contradicting? So that, but it is not really contradicting. That's why it is Virodha Abhasa. Virodha means contradiction. Abhasa means seemingly appearing like Virodha. So the first line says Sada Bala Rupa. He is always in the form of a child. Api, even then, Vignadri Hantri. He can destroy mountains of obstacles. Vigna Adri means mountains of obstacles. So the question would immediately come to our mind, how can a child destroy a mountain? But actually this shows the greatness of Ganapathi. The second line also says Mahadanti Vaktrapi Panchasya Manya. So the direct meaning of this is he has a big elephant face, but he is respected by lions also. Panchasyam means a lion. So again the question would immediately occur to us, how can a lion, which is even more powerful than an elephant, respect an elephant? Then we look carefully, we find that the word Panchasyam is actually a slesha. It is a pun. It has another meaning, which is Lord Shiva, who has 5 faces. Asyam means face. So it means that he has a huge elephant face and he is worshipped by Shiva himself. Vidhindradi Mrigya Ganesha Abhidha. He is worshipped by Brahma. He searched or sought after by Brahma and Indra. And he has the name Ganesha. With Me Vidhattam Shriyam. Let him give me Shri, which is wealth and welfare. And Kapi Kalyana Murti. He is a great, indescribable Kalyana Murti, or embodiment of good things, of auspiciousness. The next verse is a statement of humility. Many great works start with that. In Tamil we say it's Avai Adakam. No? So it starts with saying, I don't know how I'll compose because the topic is so great and I need his grace, etc. So here Acharya says it very nicely. He says, I don't know words and I don't know meanings. I don't know prose, I don't know poetry. Na janami shabdam, na janami chartham, na janami padyam, na janami gadyam. So then how do we proceed if you don't know all this? Chideka shadasya hridi dyotate me mukhan nissarante girascha apichitram. Eka shadasya, a 6-faced chit, which is a spark of consciousness. Hridi dyotate me, it shines in my heart. In my heart, a 6-faced jyoti called Subrahmanya is shining. Therefore, mukhat giraha nissarante. From my mouth, the words are just flowing out uninterruptedly. Apichitram. Apichitra means what a wonder this is. I mean, I don't know how this is happening, but with the grace of Subrahmanya, I am able to compose all these great verses. So, Subrahmanya blessing his devotees with Vak Vaibhavam or poetry, great eloquence and having the powers to compose, is seen in so many other examples also. The most famous example is Arunagirinatha, who is the composer of Tirupugal and Kandar Alangaram, Kandar Anubudhi, etc. Many such works, each of which is a treasure to devotees of Subrahmanya. So he also was blessed with the powers of composing by Murugan. And then we also have Kumara Guruparar, who was a small boy of 5 years when he went to Tiruchendur. He was brought there by his parents, who were very sad that up to this age of 5 this boy hadn't spoken, and they thought he was born mute, and they wanted to God to bless them. So they brought him to Tiruchendur. In the shrine of the Tiruchendur Subrahmanya, this boy was blessed with the power of not just talking but composing poetry. So he wrote a brilliant verse called Kandar Kalivenba at that point, which is a synopsis of the great Kanda Puranam itself. And later on, this child went on to become a great saint who has composed other famous works like Sakala Kalavalli Malai and Meenakshi Amman Pillai Tamil, etc. So he was also blessed by Muruga. Then we have even Muthuswami Dikshitar, who we mentioned earlier. When he visited Tirutani, and for the first time, he was blessed by Subrahmanya, who dropped a piece of sugar candy in his mouth, and immediately he started composing very grand and beautiful kritis. Each of them is a gem. So these kritis were composed by him after acquiring the grace of Subrahmanya, and that's why he has his mudra signature in all his songs as Guru Guha. Then even in modern times we have had a lot of saints like Pamban Swamigal, Andavan Pichai Ammayar. All these are very prolific poets, composers, who all are devotees of Kartikeya. So now the next shloka, we'll go on to that, which talks about a description of Shanmukha. Mayuradhirudham Mahavakya Gudham Manohari Deham Mahachchittageham. So he is Mayuradhirudha. He is seated on a peacock. Mahavakya Gudham. He is the secret meaning of the Mahavakyas, which are the great teachings of the Upanishads. Manohari Deham. He has a Deham form which is very beautiful. It captivates our heart. It steals our heart. Mahat Chitta Geham. His Geham or Griham is the mind of great people. So apart from looking for him in temples, we can also feel his presence in the minds of great people, hearts of great devotees. Mahi Deva Devam. Mahi Devas are also called as Bhusuras. It refers to Vaidikas, people who have learnt the Vedas and who follow the Vedic way of life. So these Vaidikas worship Agni in all their rituals, and we know that Subramanya was born as Agni Swarupa. He was born from the fire sparks which came out of Shiva's eyes. So he is the protector of the Vedas, of the Vedic followers, scholars. Mahaveda Bhavam. He is the essence or the meaning of the great Vedas. Mahadeva Balam Bhaje Lokapalam. He is the Deva Bala or child of Mahadeva, Lord Shiva. I worship him, Bhaje Lokapalam. He is also the protector of this world. So look at this verse. It has so much beautiful prasam. Prasam means alliteration, mone in Tamil. All the phrases start with Mayuradhirudham, Mahavakya Gudham, Manohari Deham, Mahachchittageham, Mahideva Devam, Mahaveda Bhavam, Mahadeva Balam, Bhaje Lokapalam. Every phrase except the Bhaje starts with Ma, so it makes it very pleasing to the ears. Apart from this prasam, it also has a rhyme at the end. Mayuradhirudham, Mahavakya Gudham, Manohari Deham, Geham, Devam, Bhavam, Balam, Palam. So you see that it has Antyaprasam, which is rhyme also. So this kind of Shabdalankaras make it a very beautiful book. You find it in quite a few verses in Subramanya Bhujangam. So this tells us the physical form of Murugan. He's seated on a peacock. He's very handsome. All this, but it also tells us the Tattvam, the philosophy about him. He is the essence of the Vedas, etc. And he protects the world. So the next three verses tell us about Tiruchendur. They tell us about the greatness of Tiruchendur and the symbolic meaning of Tiruchendur. Why is Subramanya standing on the seashore? Why is he chosen this place? Of course, the Puranic story is that is where he camped and he came to know about Shurapadman's atrocities, and then he waged war with him. He destroyed all those evil forces and protected the Devas, who are the protectors of the world, who ensure that the world goes well. So, apart from that, symbolic meaning also has been explained by Acharya. So, the next couple of verses we can call them as Utpreksha Alankar, where for a naturally occurring thing, the poet gives his own interpretation, his own reason for something. Okay, in Tamil we call this as Tarkurip. So, in the fourth one he says, Subramanya is standing on the seashore to show us that when we come to him, we shall reach the shore of the Bhavasagaram, the Piravi Kadal, the ocean of samsara, the ocean of worldly existence, births and deaths, etc. So that is what he is implying by his standing there. Yada sannidhanam gata manavami. When manava means manushyas, men come to my sannidhanam, bhavambodhi param gataste tadaiva. They immediately reach the param, shore of Bhavambodhi, which is the ocean of samsara. Iti vyanjayan, indicating this, sindhu tire ya aste. he who is standing on the bank or shore of the ocean. Tamide pavitram parashakti putram. I praise him. He is the pavitram. He is the most sacred, sanctifying one, purifying one. Parashakti putram. He is the son of goddess Parashakti. Therefore, he is very compassionate. Okay? So, we say Tayai Pol Pillai. So, he has the same compassion of Parvati or Parashakti in liberating us. And he is also Pavitram. So, the word Pavitram is significant here because we know from works like the Gita and all that the greatest purifying thing in the world is Jnanam. Okay? And Subrahmanya is Jnana Swarupa. He is Agni Swarupam. And this Jnana Agni can destroy all our ignorance and our old karmas, everything, and give us mukti. And that is why he is, being the Pavitran, he is able to take us to the Bhavasagara Param. He is able to take us across this world and give us mukti. The next verse, next question which would come in our mind is, mukti is a far thing away for us. We are right now in the middle of our lives with so many problems and difficulties. How is he going to help us with those? So he says, don't worry. He is standing on the seashore and showing us these waves. They come in a series, one after the other, and the waves just crash and they cease to exist. Similarly, all the problems, all the dangers which come to my devotees who come to me will meet with the same fate. They'll all get destroyed. This is what he is telling us by standing on the seashore and showing us the waves. That's what the next verse says. Yatha abdhehe taranga layam yanti tunga. Tunga means tall. Even the very high waves, they come and get destroyed. Tathaiva apadaha sannidhau sevatam me. May sannidhau sevatam. To those who come and pray at my sannidhi, tathaiva their apadaha means they apat all the dangers. Itiva urmi panktir nrinam darshayantam. He is showing people the urmi pankti, the series of waves. Sada bhavaye hrit saroje guhamtam. I salute him who is always inside my heart. Hrit saroje, my heart lotus. Girau mannivase nara ye adhirudhaha tada parvate rajate te adhirudha. The next verse says that those who come and climb this hill of mine will get the same benefit of climbing the silver mountain. Rajate Parvate means, Rajata Parvatam means the silver mountain, which is Kailasam. So, he is indicating, he is telling us that he is so compassionate that we don't have to go all the way to Kailasam. We know how difficult Kailasa Yatra can be. And it is not easy, it's not possible for most of us. So, we can just go to Tiruchendur and get the same benefit. So he is seated there on Gandhamadana Shailam. So now the question that would occur to us is Tiruchendur on a mountain? Isn't it on the flat ground? Isn't it on the seashore? But the thing is, it is actually on a mountain which is not very visible now. Maybe across the centuries it is no longer very high. But even now it's on a slightly raised area, which is what we can see. If we walk around the temple, we do see that there are some caves for which we have to climb up and go. So the Puranic story also says that Vishwakarma built this temple on Gandhamadana Parvatam, which is also called as Shri Gandha Parvatam. Shri Gandham is another name for Chandanam. So some people also call this as Chandanagiri. So this Shri Gandha Shailam or Gandhamadana Shailam, he has ascended it. He has mounted on this mountain and he's standing there and he's telling us this. Girau man nivase naraye dhirudha tada rajate parvate te adhirudha. They have climbed Kailas. Itiva bruvan gandha shaila adhirudha sa devo mudeme sada shanmukhostu. May that shanmukha, the six-faced one, always give me happiness. So this idea that, this thought that Tiruchendur is equal to Kailasam has been mentioned by Arunagirinatha also in one of his Tiruchendur Tirupugars, which starts with the word Iyalisayyan. He says, Kayilai malai anaya sendirpadi valve karimukavan ilaya kandapperumali. Then the next two verses tell us about how he is seated inside his temple. Mahambodhi tire mahapapachori. In that Ambodhi Tiram, the great ocean's shore, which removes all our sins, Mahapapa Chorma, all great sins, they just go away even without us realizing it. It steals away our sins. Munindra Anukule, a place which is very congenial to great saintly people. Sugandhakya Shaile, in that Sugandha mountain. Guhayam Vasantam, he is residing inside a guha, inside a cave. So in fact in Tiruchendur temple it is said that there is a cave behind the main shrine, and there are Panchalingas worshipped by Subramanya over there. He did Shiva Puja, and it is that same pose that we see him in. He holds a flower in his hand as he is doing Archana to his father, and in one of his other hands we find the Japamala also. So he's shining in that guha. Guha is normally a very dark place, but he is shining. So the whole place is effulgent because of his own radiance. Swabhasa lasantam, he's shining. Janartim harantam, he is ready to remove the arti, the sadness, sorrows of all the people. Shrayamo guhantam, we seek refuge in that guha. The next shloka says that he is inside a golden temple. Lasat swarna gehe drinam kama dohe, it grants all our desires. Sumastoma sanchanna manikya manche, on a mancham or a couch which is made of rubies, and it is covered with flowers. Sumastoma means bunches of flowers are covering this bed. He is seated on that. Samudyat sahasrarka tulya prakasham, he is shining, has the same prakasham as sahasrarkam, 1,000 suns, and not ordinary suns, but samudyat sahasrarkam, rising suns, which means reddish in color. So exactly the same description is given for Lalitamba in the Sahasranamam. We find Namam as Udyat Bhanu Sahasrabha. She is shining like 100 rising suns, 1,000 rising suns. And here too, just like his mother, he has the same complexion. Sada bhavaye kartikeyam suresham. I meditate upon this Kartikeya. So with this we come to the end of the first section, which explained the greatness, the mahatvam of Tiruchendur, as well as the tattva, explaining how Subramanya is, what are his qualities, etc. So the most important thing that we should remember is that he is the essence of the Vedas. He is the Parabrahman who is described by the Mahavakyas. He is the secret meaning of those Mahavakyas of Upanishads. Nana Veda Purulone is what one of the Tripugars tells about him. And he is also the god of, the protector of the Vedic rites and Vedas themselves. In this particular thought is found even in Nakirar's Tirumuruga Tripadai, a work which is definitely at least 2000 years old, where he says amongst the 6 faces of Muruga, one of the faces does this. Oru mugam mandira vidiyin marabuli vara andanar velvi orkume. He protects the velvis, the yagas of the andanars who follow the Vedic mantras correctly. Arunagirinathar also says the same thing in one of the Tripugars in Tiruchendur. Andan marai velvi kavarkara sendamil cholpavin malaikara. So he is the kavarkaran for Andan Marai Velvi. Now we'll go on to the second section of the Bhujangam, which is the Padhadi Keshanta Varnanam. So the convention normally in many works is that gods are described Padhadi Kesham, starting from their feet, while goddesses are described Keshadi Pada, starting from their head or face or hair, etc. So Adi Shankaracharya has followed this in Subramanya Bhujangam and similarly in Saundarya Lahari also. Even Lalita Sahasranama follows this convention. We do find some exceptions in some works also. So now we start with the first one, which is a description of his lotus feet. Here Acharya has used an alankaram called as Rupaka Alankaram. Okay, it's called metaphor. So here the feet are equated to a lotus, and he says, let my heart be the honey bee, which is always hovering around this lotus called your feet. Let my heart not go and think of other things. Let it always meditate upon your lotus feet. So here you find in a Rupaka Alankaram, every phrase will be so cleverly put together that it will apply to both the aspects. So the first one, Ranadhamsake, it'll apply to the feet as well as to the lotus. So Hamsakam means a Hamsam, which is a bird we know, a swan, which can make very sweet noises. And Hamsakam also means the anklets, the Nupuram, which is worn by the feet. So Ranadhamsake means having Hamsas making sweet noises. This applies to the lotus. And when you talk about the feet, it means that he is wearing very sweetly tinkling anklets in his feet. Manjule, both the lotus and his feet are manjulam, which is very soft and beautiful. Atyanta Shone, very red, both are red in color. Manohari Lavanya Piyusha Purni. So a lotus has to have a piyusham, which means nectar. So we know that the lotus contains nectar, which is why the honeybee goes there. So here, what is the piyusham which is found in his feet? That is the lavanya, the beauty which is exuding from his feet is the nectar. Manohari lavanyam. Here again the word manohari. It steals our heart. Manas shatpado me. Me manas shatpada means my mind, which is a honeybee. Shatpadam. Bhavaklesha taptaha, it's got very tired by all the heat in this worldly existence. Sada modatam skanda te padapatme. O skanda, let it take rest always on your lotus feet. Because it's already very tired with roaming in the heat of this world. The next one talks about his waist, where he's wearing divyambaram, beautiful yellow garments which is like gold. Then he is wearing a kinkini mekhala. The mekhala means the odyanam or the girdle which has lot of jingling bells, kinkinis. Then he has a golden belt also, hema pattam, which is worn to keep the garment in place. And because of this, and his whole body is so radiant that in every line of this verse, Acharya has used the word for shining. Suvarnabha divyambarair bhasamanam. Bhasamanam also shining. Kvanat kinkini mekhala shobhamanam. Shobhamana also is shining. Lasad hema pattena vidyotamanam. Vidyotamanam, it's dazzling or it is brilliant. Katim bhavaye skanda te. Hey skanda, I meditate on your kati, your waist. Deepyamanam, it is shining. So this gives us an idea. The next one talks about his chest. In that also Acharya has used Utpreksha Alankaram, where he sees that the chest is red in color, very red, because it is applied with saffron paste, which has actually got displaced there. It has got placed there from the saffron paste which goddess Sri Valli has applied on her bosom. When he embraces her, she is his younger consort. When he embraces her, all that kunkumam here means the saffron paste that has got transferred to his chest, so it looks red. And we know that in all languages, in many languages, red is the color of passion or ardor. So Acharya says, this red color on your chest seems to me that your eagerness or your ardor to protect your devotees is manifested outside. So that's the meaning he gives to this kunkumam. So Pulindesha Kanya, Pulinda Isha means the king of hunters. Kanya, his daughter, which is Valli. Ganabhoga Tunga Stanalingana Sakta Kashmira Ragam. The redness of the Kashmiram, which is Asaktam, which is stuck onto your chest because of the Alinganam. Namasyamyaham, I worship, I salute this chest of yours. He Tarakare. Tarakare means, O destroyer of Tarakasura. Tava uraha, your chest I salute. Swabhaktavane sarvada sanuragam. Sarvada, it's always very sanuragam. It is filled with anuragam, which is eagerness. Swabhaktavane, in protecting your devotees. And that eagerness is manifest here as the Kunkuma, Kashmiram. The next verse is about his powerful arms, and to indicate the very powerful, forceful nature of his arms, which can destroy all the evil asuras and protect the world, to show that the whole verse is filled with prasam, danda, anda, shunda, etc. And the meaning is just like what I said. And so the sound, the prasam itself gives the effect of his arms being very powerful. So another Shabda Alankaram here. Vidhau klipta dandan swalila dhritandan. They playfully protect the andas, all the universes. Nirastebha shundan, dvishat kaladanda. They have surpassed the ibhashunda, means the trunk of an elephant in beauty, in the powerful shape and nature. Dvishat kaladandan, it is the staff of Yama to all the enemies. Hatendrari Shandhan, it has removed all the enemies of Indra. Jagat Trana Shaunda, they are expert in protecting the various worlds. Sadate Prachandan Shraye Bahudandan. Hey Skanda, I take refuge. Shraye means I take refuge in your Bahudanda, your big arms which are like dandas, staffs. And they are Prachanda, they are very forceful, they are very powerful. So now we go on to the lovely description of his face in the next verse. So the next verse describes his 6 faces. Here Acharya uses an alankaram called Abhutopama. In Tamil we call this as Il Porul Ovamai Ani. Normally Ovamai or simile is done when you compare something to something else, and the rule in poetry is that you must always compare something to something superior. So for example, a human who has a very beautiful face, we would say her face is like a lotus or his face is like the moon, etc. Because lotus and moon are far more beautiful than any human's face. But when you talk about Subrahmanya, who is the god of beauty, in Tamil we call him Murugan because he is so filled with beauty. So in his case, his faces are so beautiful, 6 faces, that even comparing them to the moon will be inappropriate. So Acharya says, if the moon were to fulfill 5 conditions, and we know that these are impossible conditions, then I would say that your face is like the moon. And he gives this 5 conditions. That's why it's an abhutopama. Such a condition can never be true. So he says, suppose there were 6 moons simultaneously. Samantat means at the same time. And all these 6 moons were Sharada, meaning they were belonging to the autumn season, Sharat Kala. So we know that Sharat Chandra means in the autumn season, which is after the rainy season, the sky is very clear and therefore the moon is even brighter than usual. So Shada Sharadaha Shan Mrigankaha Yadisyuhu. If there were 6 moon at a time, all of them being autumnal moon all the time, Samudyanta eva sthitaha samantat. They were all always in the rising state. So when the moon rises, it's very big and very radiant. Then slowly across the night, we can see that it becomes smaller and not so impressive in the middle of the night. So Samudyanta eva. Udyanta means it is rising. Sada Purna Bimba, and these 6 have to be always full moon, which you know is never possible. A moon will never stay full. It has this quality of waning and waxing. So if these moons were always full, and Kalankaishchahina, if the moons did not have any blemish, so the moon is known for a blemish, a scar on him, a mark which looks like a rabbit or a deer. That's why we have names for him like Shashank, Mrigank and all that, no? So he says, if there were 6 such moons, then tada twan mukhanam samyam bruve. I'll say that these are equal to your faces, O Skanda. Sada Sharadaha Shan Mrigankaha Yadisyuhu Samudyanta eva sthitaha chet samantat Sada Purna Bimbaha Kalankaishchahinaha Tada Twan Mukhanam Bruve Skanda Samyam. So this is a beautiful way of saying that there is no comparison to his face and all other creations are much lesser in comparison. The next verse also is about the 6 faces. There he says that your faces are like the 6 lotuses. Here is a Rupaka Alankaram. Here just like the Padam. Here also it's Mukham Bhoruham. The faces are like lotuses. And if there are lotuses, there should be white swans around it. So where are the white swans here? The white smiles that we see on each of these faces, those mandahasams look like swans. So Spuran mandahasaihi sa hamsani. Then there should be bees moving very fast, hovering around the lotuses. Where are the bees here? Here his 12 eyes are chanchat kataksham. They are moving around very quickly, darting here and there his eyes are. And those look like Bringa Sangham, meaning a group of a host of honeybees. So, Chanchat Katakshawali Bringa Sanghojvalani. Then, if there is lotus, there should be nectar. So, where is the nectar here? So, here his 6 lips or 6 mouths have these beautiful red lips from which his Adhara Sudha, his sweet smile and words are oozing out. So, those are like the nectar. So, Sudhasyandi Bimba Adharani. Bimbam means Kovai Param, the ivy gourd flower, fruit, and that is very red in color. It's shaped like a lip, and therefore we often compare the beautiful lips to Bimba. Okay, so Bimba Adharani Isha Suno, O son of Shiva, Tava Alokaye Shanmukha Ambhoruhani. I see your 6 lotus faces. Then the next one is a very beautiful and touching prayer. He says, O Shanmukha, you have 12 eyes, and each of them is so long, each of them is almost touching the ears, and they are all very wide also. So you have long and wide eyes, and they are just not normally normalized, they are filled with compassion. Their compassion is just pouring out of them, it's coming out of them. So such beautiful eyes you have, 12 of them. Can't you just see me once with them, with one of them? If you do that, what is your loss? What hani do you get? But for me, this can mean everything. I'll get everything by your kataksham. So, Vishaleshu Karnanta Dirgheshu Ajasram Dayasyandishu. Always they are exuding compassion. Dwadashasu Ikshaneshu, in your 12 eyes. Mayi Ishat Katakshaha, a little bit of your side glance. Sakrit Patitaschit. Sakrit means once, just once if you look at me. Bhavet te dayashila kanamahanihi. He dayashila, he compassionate one, what will be your loss? In fact, we find exactly the same prayer in one verse in Saundarya Lahari, Drishadaraghiyasya, where again he requests Devi to glance upon him once. Then, now we come to the last part of the Padhadi Kesha Varnana, which is the head of Shanmukha, the heads, 6 of them. So I'll first explain the second half of the verse. Jagat Bhara Bhritbhyaha. These are 6 heads which bear the burden of the world. Jagannatha, O Lord of the world. Tebhyaha Kiritojvalebhyo Namo Mastakebhyaha. Namo, I salute your mastakas, your 6 heads, which are shining with crowns on them. Kiritojvalebhyaha. Now, the first 2 lines give us one more description of these heads. What kind of heads are these? These are the heads which Shiva inhales and takes the fragrance of chanting some mantra. And what is this mantra that Shiva is chanting? He's saying, Sutta Angodbhavo Mesi Jiva. Oh my child, you are born from me. May you live long. So this is the mantra that Shiva is saying. Iti Shraddha. He says this mantra not once, 6 times. That's why it's a mantra. He's repeating this. Each time, as he goes to each and every head, he says, Oh my child, you're born from me. May you live long. So this is the genuine feeling which a parent has towards his beloved child. And in fact, this statement is said to be a reflection of one of the Vedic mantras, which describes how a child is blessed. So Japan Mantram Ishaha, Lord Shiva, Muda, with lot of joy, Jigrate Yan, the heads that he smells. So this activity of an elder showing his love towards a beloved child or a younger sibling, etc., is called Uchi Mugardal in Tamil. It is one way of showing this love, and we find it a lot in Ramayanam also. Lord Rama keeps on doing this Uchi Mugardal to his younger brothers and all. So Japan Mantram Isho Muda Jighrateyan Tebhyo Namo Mastakebhya. I salute your heads which have been blessed like this with Shiva. Such a beautiful poetic description of which tells us how Shiva adores his child. Now, after describing him part by part, now we see a full picture of Subrahmanya in the next verse. Spurad Ratna Keyura Harabhiramaha. He is shining with gem-studded keyurams, armlets and haram, necklaces. Chalat Kundala Shrilasad Gandabhaga. His Gandabhagam, his cheeks are shining because of the Kundalam, Chalat Kundalam. The moving Kundalas are reflected in his cheek because his cheeks are so shiny and smooth like a glass, like a mirror. Katau Pitavasaha. He has Pitavasa means yellow silk on his waist. Kare Charu Shakti. In his hand he has a very lovely veil, Velayudham, Shakti Ayudham. Purastan Mama Astam Purarehe Tanujaha. The son of Purari, Shiva, let him appear, may he appear in front of me. Mama Puraha Purastat Astam. So now we have seen a full description of Subramanya. Now if we can imagine this to be like zooming in on each of his limbs, and now we zoomed out a little bit and saw him fully, and now we are zooming out a little more and seeing his family. We are seeing him with his parents. A beautiful description of Shiva as Soma Skanda is found in the next verse. Many Mahans have said that this is the this description is so powerful that it can actually, if you say this verse, chant it many times and meditate on this particular form, then one can be blessed with progeny. So this verse is here, and here we see a picture of Shiva spreading out his hands with his outstretched hands, not just two hands. The word here is hastan. Hastan is bahuvachanam, which means more than two. At least 4 or 8 hands he is spread out, and he is calling his child. Iha ayahi vatsa. Oh child, come to me. When he is calling like this so lovingly, Skanda, who is seated on his mother's lap, on Uma's lap, very happily, the moment he sees his father calling him, he just jumps out, he tumbles out of his mother's lap, flies into his father's arms. So samutpatya, the word itself means jumping out or flying out. He reaches his father and his father embraces him happily. So this picture we see in the next line. So we can see the description of all three of them, Shiva with Uma and Skanda, where he is called Soma Skanda. So that dhyanam is found in the next verse. Iha ayahi vatsa iti hastan prasarya ahvayati adarat Shankare. When Shiva calls him, ahvayati is calling you, adarat, with great affection. Matuhu ankat, from the lap of your mother, samutpatya, jumping out, tatam shrayantam kumaram, this child who reaches his father's hands. Hara ashlishta gatram, he has his body, entire body is now embraced tightly by Shiva with all his hands. You can imagine, 4 or 8 hands he has to hug his child with. Bhaje Bala Murti. So I worship this Bala Murti, this Subramanya, in a form of a child. So in fact, in Somaskanda Vigrahams in the temples, that's the most important celebrated Utsava Murti. We find it being used in this form, being used in all the Brahmotsavams usually, and that's because we want him to bless us with a very happy family life, and that's why this form of Shiva is very dear to all of us. So there, in all those Somaskanda Vigrahams, we find that Subramanya is never seated quietly. He is always seen dancing or jumping. So that is so appropriate. And in fact, the iconography of Somaskandar, in one of his hands he has a mudra which is called Ahuya Varada. Ahuya Varada means that is of course meant for devotees like us. He is calling us and giving us varams. He is not just, if we come and ask him, he's giving, that is a normal Varada Mudra, Abhaya Varadam we find. But this is Ahuya Varadam. So you will find that there is one hand which one finger is stretched out as if calling us, come and take view. So this Ahuya is, you can find that it's reflected in this verse here as Ahvayati Adarat Shankar. He's calling the child, just like he calls the Bhaktas. So that's another nice coincidence or a correlation we see here. So with this we come to the end of the second section of Subramanya Bhujangam, which is the Rupa Varnanam of Kartikeya. Now we come to the last part, which has 5 or 6 different types of prarthanas. The 19th verse has one simple prarthana. Raksha mam, sada raksha mam tvam. O Lord, always protect me. And before making this prayer, he calls out to Kumara in 11 different names. Kumara Ishasuno Guha Skanda Senapate Shaktipane Mayuradhirudha. O Kumara, O son of Isha, Shiva, Guha Skanda Senapate, O Lord of Goddess Devasena, Shaktipani, O one holding the Velayudham in your hand, Mayuradhirudha, O one who is seated on a peacock, Pulindatmaja Kanta, O husband or lord of Pulindatmaja, the daughter of the hunter, which is Valli. Bhaktarti Harin, O remover of all distresses, of sufferings of bhaktas. Prabho Tarakari, O very powerful one, O Tarakari, destroyer of Tarakasura, Sada Rakshamam Tvam. Now, there is a very nice, very beautiful commentary on Subramanya Bhujangam written by a great scholar called as Tediyur Subramanya Shastri. So, he has described this particular verse, he has explained this verse as in the following manner. He says, there are 11 shlokas in the Skanda Puranam which are told by Sanat Kumara Maharishi to Narada. And why does he say these 11 verses? He says these 11 are helpful. If you chant them, they will help us to control our 11 indriyas and mind. We have 10 indriyas, 5 jnanendriyas and 5 karmendriyas, and then along with that is our mind, the manas. So together we have these 11 very unruly tattvas in us, and we need God's help to control them. That is the first step, no, shamadamam, etc. These are the first step to progressing spiritually. And how do we do this with the help of, easily? So Acharya, in his great compassion, says Tediyur Shastri, he has compressed these 11 shlokas into 11 namams in this particular verse. So if we just chant this verse, he will help us to gain control over our senses. The next 3 verses are a very well-known prarthana. They say that, please, O Subrahmanya, please come at the time of my death and take me with you. Don't let the Yama Kinkaras take me away. They are ready to take me away and torment me because of all the evil things that I have done. But you have to protect me by taking me with you. You have to come and take me to Mukti. So, Kritantasya Duteshu. So he says, Prashantendriye, when my senses at that time will be senseless. I will not have any power over my body at that time. I will be senseless. I will be unable to ask you for any help at that time. So, and I will be trembling looking at these Yama Kinkaras, Yama Bhattas. So when the Yama Dutas come, they'll be very angry with me. They'll be Chandas, which means they're very, very terrible, and they'll say because of their anger, Kopat, Daha Chindi Bhindi iti Mam Tarjayat. So they'll threaten me with words like burn him, break him, cut him, etc. because they know that I've done so many wrong things. At that time, Mayuram Samaruhya Ma Bhaihi iti Tvam Puraha Shaktipanihi Mamayahi Shighram. You must come seated on your peacock, holding the veil in your hand, the Shakti veil in your hand. Shighram, you must quickly come at that point. Now, why should Muruga come in this particular form? Here again, Tediyur Shastri has given us a very beautiful shloka quoted from the Skanda Puranam. He says, there is one shloka which says, Veda eva mayurasyat pranavaha shanmukhas tatha brahma vidyapi shaktihi syat mokshaha taddarshanat smritaha. So the Vedas are the peacock. The peacock is an embodiment of the Vedas, and Shanmukha himself is Pranava, the Omkaram, and his Shakti, his Velayudham is Brahma Vidya. It's Brahma Jnanam. It is Jnanam itself personified. Mokshaha taddarshanat smritaha. So when we see these 3 together, it is obviously moksham or mukti for all of us. So he should come and give us jnanam, and the same jnanam which is enshrined in the Vedas, he should impart that to us and take us with him. He merge us with him. So this is the prayer in the next 3 verses 20 to 22. The next 2 verses, next few verses, we have to understand that there is a theme. In fact, we always describe gods as Adi Vyadhi Harana. We want them to remove Adi and Vyadhi. Vyadhi is a common term. It means physical suffering or ailments, diseases, etc. Adi refers to mental suffering, all the distresses and fears and all the various things like which affect our mind. So the next two shlokas he says, "Oh Lord, why aren't you not removing my mental afflictions, my mental suffering?" So the word for that in the next shloka is klesham. He asks in a very dramatic manner. He says, "Oh Muruga, you were able to destroy this Surapadman who was so powerful. He ruled all over this Sahasrandam, the 1,000 andams or universes. He was the king of. He was killed by you. And so were his brothers, Simhavaktran and Taraka, Simhamukhasuran and Tarakasuran. But when you were able to kill all these huge, big asuras, there is one klesham inside my heart. If it's inside my heart, then it's quite subtle only, no? But this you are not killing, you are not removing. Now what do I do? Kim karomi, kvayami, where shall I go if you don't do this?" So it's a very touching and quite a dramatic prayer. It says that, "Sahasranda bhokta tvaya shura nama hataha tarakaha simhavaktrascha daityaha." All these great daityas were killed by you. "Mama antar hridistham manah klesham ekam na hamsi prabhu." This one klesham which I have in my heart, you're not destroying. Na hamsi, you're not killing. "Prabho, kim karomi, what will I do? Kvayami, where do I go?" So he is demanding this peace of mind, like in a very, with the sense of liberty that a child would ask his parents with. The next one also he says, "Why don't you remove my Adi?" The same word, Adi, Klesham, all these are sufferings of the mind. So he says, "I am always overcome by these sufferings, and you are Dina Bandhu. You are the one who always helps poor and miserable people. And so Subramanya asks him, why should I remove your suffering? How will it, why are you asking this?" So he says, see, the suffering is, or this Adi is a big obstruction to my bhakti to you. If instead of thinking about you, my mind is worrying about this and that. So if you remove my worries, then I will be able to practice bhakti to you in a much more uninterrupted and happy manner. So that's the reason. So that phrase is so nice and important here. Aham sarvada dukkha bharavasanno bhavam dina bandhu. You are a dina bandhu. Twadanyam nayache. So I won't ask anyone else. Bhavat bhakti rodham sada klipta badham. That which removes, the bhavat bhakti rodham, the adi, which is a obstruction to your bhakti. Sada klipta badham, always causing me suffering. Mama adhim drutam nashaya. Please destroy it quickly. Hey Uma Sutta Tvam. Oh son of Uma, you must do that. The next one is about the Vyadhis. He makes a long list of very, very terrible diseases like epilepsy, leprosy, consumption, etc. And he says even those great rogas, very powerful, great diseases, as well as pishachas, the evil spirits, all these are destroyed by simply looking at your patra bhuti. So he says that the way in which we can get rid of physical ailments is to wear the patra vibhuti of, or ilai vibhuti it's called in Tamil. This is the prasadam of Subrahmanya in Tiruchendur especially. The vibhuti, a sacred ash, is given in the leaf of a particular tree. The tree is called the Pannir Maram. So this leaf, when it is when the vibhuti is packed and given in that becomes a very great aushadham, a great medicine to heal all these diseases. So he says, apasmara kushtha kshayarsha prameha jvara unmada gulmadi rogaha mahantaha. All these mahan rogas. Pishachascha sarve bhavat patra bhutim vilokya. Just seeing your patra vibhutim, kshanat tarakare dravante. They just vanish, run away in a moment. So this importance of patra vibhuti, again Muthuswami Dikshita has mentioned in one of his kritis in Tiruchendur, which starts with Shri Subrahmanyo Mam Rakshatu. And he describes the Lord as patra vibhuti pradana nipunaha. He's the one who is skilled in helping us by giving Patra Vibhuti. So one of the stories connected to this Patra, many testimonies you will find if you look around, search everywhere, you will find that many people have written how the Patra Vibhuti has helped them or people in their own families to get rid of all kinds of ailments. One famous story is that of a person called Pagari Koothar. This Pagari Koothar was suffering from terrible stomachache, and he came to Tiruchendur, and the priest gave him Ilai Vibhuti and told him to wear it and said, you become all right and you sing something in praise of this Lord, because he knew Pagari Koothar was a scholar. So Pagari Koothar wore this Patra Vibhuti, got cured, and he has written a very nice book called Tiruchendur Murugan Pillai Tamil. So this is one example of the power efficacy of Patra Vibhuti. Then the next one is a prayer which says, let all my senses be always immersed in you. Drishi Skanda Murtihi, Shrutau Skanda Kirti. So in my eyes, let my sight be always on the Murti, the form of Skanda. My ears in the Skanda Kirti, in the praises of Skanda. Mukhe me pavitram sada tacharitam. Let my mouth always keep talking about his stories. Kare tasya krityam. In my hands I should always be doing his work. Vapustasya bhrityam. Let my whole body be his servant, slave. Guhe santu lina mama asesha bhava. We find such similar prayers in many other works, like in Shivananda Lahari or in Mukunda Mala of Kulashekara Alvar. He makes a very similar prayer. And the famous Devaram called Thiru Angamala, where Appar Swamigal, he says, he talks to each part of his body and says, oh my head, worship Shiva. Oh my eyes, see the Lord. Oh my tongue, sing his praise. So he wants them all to be, the entire body to be engaged in worshipping them. The next one is a prayer which says, is a praise to Subrahmanya. It says, there are many other gods who are so kind to great rishis and to great bhaktas. But what about very ordinary people who practice the kind of bhakti called as Pamara Bhakti? No, they don't know, they are not very refined, they are not very knowledgeable, but they just have a lot of faith in you and they love you. But even to them, you are so kind, you grant them whatever they want and you help them to grow and become pure and become refined, etc. So he says, therefore, I don't see any other god who can be like Guha, who can take care of even people of very low and ordinary births. Munina mutaho nranam bhakti bhajam abhishta prada santi sarvatra devaha. All the other devas are abhishta prada, giving all the desires to munis and bhakti bhaja, to men who are very great devotees. Drinam antyajanam api swa arthadani. So even to very ordinary people, Guhat devamanyam na jane. I don't know of any other god who gives swa arthadani, mean to give them whatever they want. So the next prayer is, let not only me and my senses, but also let the people in my household, not only people, let even the animals in my household, the cattle, let them all be your devotees. Kalatram sutaha bandhu vargaha pashurva. My spouse, children, my relatives, the pashu, all the cattle. Narovathanari griheye madiya. All the men and women who work or live in my household. Yajanto namantaha stuvanto bhavantam. Let them be saluting you and praising you. Smarantaschati. Let them be thinking of you. Hey Kumara. So let me be surrounded by such bhaktas and therefore always be in satsangam, even if I am at home. Then the next prayer is something which is, in fact, the previous one where the household, all the components of the household are mentioned. No, this is also reminiscent of a Vedic prarthana. We find very similar prayers in Vedas also. Then the next one says, let all evils be destroyed by your Velayudham, the Shakti Ayudham, which has such a sharp edge or a tip. That tip can destroy all kinds of evil. So, Murga, Pakshino, Damshaka, all the animals or birds which can bite and harm us. Vyadhayo, Badhakaye, Madange, all the dushta mrigams, as well as the evil diseases which can affect my body. All these bhavat shakti tikshna agra bhinnaha, all bhinna, broken by the tikshna agra, means the sharp tip of your shakti. Sudure vinashyantu, let them be thrown far away. Churnita krauncha shaila, O one who destroyed Kraunchagiri and made it into powder. That's the name for Shanmukha here. Then the last prayer is, I have done so many things and I may have done many faults also, I may have done many wrongdoings also, but just like a mother and father forgive their child, they, even if the child does something wrong, they don't disown the child or throw him away or something, but they keep forgiving and giving him more chances, keep helping him in many ways. Similarly, I am a very small child, Ati Bala I am, and you are the father of the world, and therefore you must forgive all my, tolerate all my crimes and faults and protect me. Janitri Pita Cha Swaputra Aparadham Sahete Nakim. Don't they do that? Devasenadhinatha, O Lord of Goddess Devasena, Aham cha atibalo bhavan lokatataha, kshamasva aparadham samastam mahesha. O Lord, forgive all my samastam aparadham, all my mistakes, you please forgive. So with this, the Subramanya Bhujangam ends, all the prayers end, and then you have two verses which are, one is a namaskaram. He says, Namah kekine shaktaye chapi tubhyam. I salute the Keki, which is the peacock, and Shakti, the Velayudam. So exactly the same line, which, I mean, the entire line is exactly like saying Velum Mailum Tune. Namas Chagatubhyam Namah Kukkutaya. I salute your goat, which is another Vahanam, another vehicle of Subramanya. Then Kukkuta, the rooster, which is the flag or emblem of Subramanya. Namas Sindhave Sindhu Deshayi Tubhyam. I salute this ocean which is near your temple, Sindhu Desham, this entire seashore on which you are residing. This whole place is sacred, so I salute it. Punas Skandamurte Namaste Namostu. I salute you again and again. Jaya Ananda Bhuman, Jaya Paradhaman, Jaya Amogha Kirte, Jayananda Murte, Jaya Ananda Sindho, Jaya Asesha Bandho, Jayatvam Sada Muktidana Ishasunu. O son of Shiva, you are Muktidana, you are the giver of Mukti. And you are Ananda Murti, Ananda Sindhu, an ocean of bliss. Asesha Bandhu, you are a friend to everyone on this earth. So, Jayatvam, may you always be victorious. Hail to you. So with this he concludes the Bhujangam, and then finally he says, whoever says this stotra after saluting Guha many times, Sampranamya means saluting him, and he should say this Bhakti Yukta. So here you find that in these two verses he has said that we should use all our three karanams, our three instruments. We should say this stavam with our stotram with our mouths, Bhakti Yukta, so our mind should be thinking lovingly of Skanda, and Sampranamya, our body should fall down in namaskaram to him. So using Manam, Mori, Mei, all three karanams, Mano, Vak, Kayam, we say. So all these we use and we salute him and we pray to him. So such a person who says this stotram, he gets all the benefits in this world, a long life, a good family life, all bhogas, everything he gets, dhanam, everything which makes life very, very fulfilling and happy here. And ante skanda sayujyam labhet. He will attain. Skanda sayujyam means he will be united, he will become one with Skanda. So what a wonderful blessing, no? Iha para saubhagyam. Both are mentioned as being given by Shanmukha over here. So with this we come to the end of this discussion. So we looked at the three parts, and we saw that he uses so many alankarams as he describes and prays to Shanmukha, and he teaches us how to pray to God. You know, when we stand in front of in the shrine of God, we don't know how to pray properly. So these stotras, which are composed by great Mahans, they don't pray for themselves. Now Adi Shankaracharya, even his physical ailment getting cured, all that is just a leela, it's just a pretext. He doesn't really need do all this. All this is just out of compassion for us, so that we will have a powerful stotra to pray with. and we will know how to pray to God. So the one question which keeps arising, which may arise in people's minds, is if it has a work which has so much mantra shakti, where simply the chanting itself can give us all the power, we don't need to know the meaning. It's a fact. So then why do we need to delve into the meaning of this? The reason is that Acharya has infused these verses with so much poetic beauty, so much bhavam, lofty emotions, that when we immerse ourselves in it, it is a spiritually elevating exercise for us. It is something which we can really enjoy, and the way we chant, our experience can become much more immersive and enjoyable if we know the meaning. That's why the effort to go through and understand the significance and the beauty of each verse is required. So I conclude with the prayer that Subrahmanya should bless us all with good health and continued bhakti to him, and give us the determination to chant this prayer regularly and benefit from this, and benefit not only us but all the people around us, the whole society, the whole world should benefit because of our prayers. Namaskaram.